Good morning, students. Today we'll be studying the first chapter of the book Politics in India After Independence. The name of the chapter is Challenges of Nation Building. Now, what are the challenges that a new nation faces? India attained its independence on the midnight of 14th and 15th August 1947. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, who was the first Prime Minister of Free India, addressed a special session of the Constituent Assembly that night. The speech that he gave in the Constituent Assembly that night is known as Trust with Destiny. There were two goals that everyone agreed upon for independent India. First one was, we shall run our country through democratic government. The government will work for the good of the all, particularly the poor and the socially disadvantaged groups of the country. But India's freedom came with partition. India was divided into India and Pakistan. The partition resulted in large scale violence and trauma of displacement. This partition challenged the idea of secularity. It was in this situation that India started its journey to achieve its objectives. So, this is how India got independent. India is a very vast country. It is a land of continental size and diversity. The people of India speak different languages and follow different cultures and religions. At that time, it was believed that a country that had such kinds of diversity could not remain together for very long. And the partition of India appeared to be everyone's worst fear. So, the first challenge that India faced after independence was to build a nation that was united and was able to accommodate diversity. The second challenge that India faced after independence was to establish democracy. Indian constitution makers adopted for representative democracy with parliamentary form of government. Constitution even granted fundamental rights to citizens, and right to vote was granted to every citizen irrespective of their caste, religion, creed, gender. A democratic constitution is necessary for establishing democracy, but it is not sufficient. So, the challenge was to develop democratic practices in accordance with the Constitution of India. Now, the third challenge. The third challenge that India faced after independence was to ensure the development and well being of the entire society and not only of some sections of the society. The Constitution of India has principles of equality and special protection of socially disadvantaged groups and religions and cultural communities. The Constitution also set out in the directive principles of state policy the welfare goals that democratic politics must achieve. So, the real challenge was to evolve effective policies for economic development and eradication of poverty. So, these are the three challenges that India faced just after the independence. Now, the next topic is partition, displacement, and rehabilitation. On 14th-15th August 1947, two nation states were created, India and Pakistan. This creation of two nation states was the result of the two nation theory that was supported by Muslim League or demanded by the Muslim League. The Muslim League said that India consisted of two people, Hindus and Muslims, so there should be a separate nation for the Muslims. The Congress opposed this theory and the demand for Pakistan. But the political conditions in 1940s, like competition between Congress and Muslim League, the British rule led to the creation of Pakistan. Now, the process of partition, how the partition happened. India was divided into two parts, India and Pakistan. This division of India was not only very painful but was also difficult to decide and to implement. It was decided to follow the principle of religious majorities. This means that the areas where Muslims were in majority would make up the territory of Pakistan, the rest will stay with India. This plan looks simple, but there were difficulties in implementing the plan. The first difficulty was there was no single belt of Muslim majority areas in British India. There were actually two areas of Muslim majority, one in the west and the other in the east. These two areas, the west and the east, could not be joined in any way. So Pakistan comprised of two territories, west and the east Pakistan, that was separated by a long expanse of Indian territories. The second problem was that all Muslim majority areas did not want it to be in Pakistan. Khan Abdul Zafar Khan, the leader of North-Western Frontier Province, also known as Frontier Gandhi, was opposed to this two-nation theory. But his voice was ignored and NWFP was merged with Pakistan. The third problem was that two of the Muslim majority provinces of British India, that is Punjab and Bengal, had a very large area where non-Muslims were in majority. So for these two provinces, that is Punjab and Bengal, it was decided that they would be divided according to the religious majority at the district level or even at lower levels. The partition of these two provinces caused the deepest trauma of partition. The fourth problem was of minorities on both sides of the border. Lakhs of Hindus and Sikhs in the areas that were now in Pakistan and an equally large number of Muslims on the Indian side of Punjab and Bengal found themselves trapped. The minorities on both sides, that is India and Pakistan, became easy target of attacks. The people and political leaders kept on hoping that this violence was temporary and would be controlled soon, but the violence went out of control. The minorities on both sides of the border were left with no option except to leave their homes. They had to even leave their homes at few hours notice sometimes. So this was the process of partition. This is how the partition happened and what were the problems that India faced in implementing the plan of the partition. Now, what were the consequences of partition? This partition of India into India and Pakistan in 1947 was one of the largest unplanned and tragic transfer of population that human history had known. There were killings, kidnaps, rapes, attacks on both sides of the border. Thousands of women were kidnapped on both sides of the border. They were forced to convert to the religion of the kidnapper and were forced to marry them. In many cases, women were killed by their own family members to preserve the family honor. Cities like Lahore, Amritsar, and Kolkata were divided into communal zones. Muslims would avoid going into the areas where mainly Hindus and Sikhs lived, and Hindus and Sikhs stayed away from Muslim areas. Minorities on both sides left their home and often took temporary shelter in refugee camps. They often found local administration and police unhelpful in what was till now their own country. People travelled to the other side of the new border by all sorts of means, often by foot. During this journey, they were often attacked or killed. Many children got separated from their parents. People who managed to cross the border had no home on the other side. For lakhs of these refugees, the country's freedom meant life in a refugee camp for months and sometimes even for years. The partition was not merely a division of properties, liabilities, assets, and things like table, chair, paper clips, etc., or political division. It was a division of hearts. It was a violent separation of communities who had lived as neighbors till now. It is estimated that the partition forced about 80 lakh people to migrate across new border. Between 5 to 10 lakh people were killed in partition related violence. So these were the consequences of the partition of India into India and Pakistan. Now after partition, next challenge was integration of princely states. During British India, there were two types of states: provincial states and princely states. Provincial states were under direct British control, but several large and small states were controlled by local rulers. But these local rulers accepted the supremacy of Britishers. So the states that were ruled by the local rulers were known as princely states, and these states enjoyed some form of control over internal affairs. The British government, during the process of partition, decided that these princely states were free to join either India or Pakistan, or they can remain independent if they wish so after India's independence. This decision was left to the rulers of the princely state and not to the people of those states. The rulers of Travancore, Hyderabad and Bhopal decided that they would remain independent. In most princely states, government would run in a non-democratic manner and rulers were unwilling to give democratic rights to their population. This response of the rulers of the princely states meant that after independence, there was very real possibility that India would be further divided into a number of small countries. India's independence was aimed at unity, self-determination as well as democracy, but this decision of the princely states would never be able to fulfill the objectives of free India. So what was the government's approach towards the princely state to make them join India? The interim government took a very strong stand against the possibility of the division of India into small principalities. The Muslim League opposed the Indian National Congress and took that these states should be free to adopt any course they liked. Sardar Patel, the Deputy Prime Minister of India and the Home Minister of India during that period, played a historical role in negotiating with the rulers of the princely state firmly but diplomatically and bringing most of them into the Indian Union. The Indian government was guided by three considerations. First one was the people of most of the princely states clearly wanted to become part of the Indian Union. The government was prepared to be flexible in giving autonomy to some regions. The idea was to accommodate diversity and adopt a flexible approach in dealing with the regions. The third idea was that in the backdrop of partition, which brought into focus the demarcation of territory, the integration and consolidation of territorial boundaries of the nation had assumed supreme importance. Before 15th August 1947, this peaceful negotiation of the government brought almost all the princely states whose territories were touching to the new boundaries of India into the Indian Union. The rulers of most of these states signed a document called Instrument of Accession, which meant that their states agreed to become the part of Union of India. So this policy of the government helped in uniting India, and Sardar Patel played a very dominant role in bringing princely states into the Indian Union. Most of the princely states joined Indian Union, but there were few states that were still disagreeing to join Indian Union. One of them was Hyderabad. The rulers of the Hyderabad carried the title of Nizam, and he was one of the richest man of world. Nizam wanted independent status for Hyderabad. He entered into what called as standstill agreement with India in November 1947 for a year. The communities and the but there were communities who were against the rule of the Nizam, especially the peasantry community in Telangana. These communities and the Hyderabad Congress were in the forefront of the movement that took against the Nizam. A large number of women were even opposed to this Nizam rule in Hyderabad. So, this led to a violent movement against the Nizam of Hyderabad. Nizam tried to control this violent movement against him through a paramilitary force known as Razakars on the people. This paramilitary force had no boundary. Uh, it murdered people, maimed them, and looted particularly the non-Muslims. After a few, so the Indian government decided to send Indian army to Hyderabad. After fighting for few days, the Nizam surrendered. This led to Hyderabad's accession to India. Now the next state that created some problem was Manipur. The Maharaja of Manipur. The Maharaja of Manipur signed the instrument of accession with the Indian government on the assurance that the internal autonomy of Manipur would be maintained. But the people of Manipur did not like this. Under the pressure of the public opinion, Maharaja held elections in Manipur in June 1948. After that elections, Manipur had a constitutional monarchy. Thus, the Manipur was the first part of India to hold elections based on universal adult franchise after independence. The elected Legislative Assembly of Manipur was against in joining Indian Union, but the government of India succeeded in pressurizing the Maharaja into signing a merger agreement in September 1949 without consulting the popularly elected Legislative Assembly of the Manipur. So Manipur even became the part of Indian Union. Reorganization of states. Now the challenge was to draw internal boundary of the Indian states. The boundaries had to be drawn in such a way that the linguistic and cultural diversity of the country could be reflected without affecting the unity of the India. During the colonial period, the state boundaries were drawn on administrative basis. After the Nagpur session of Congress in 1920, it was the principle of International Congress that the boundaries will be drawn on the basis of linguistic and cultural diversity. But the national leaders felt that this drawing of boundaries of states on the basis of language might lead to disintegration of the India. The national leaders were worried that this division of the Indian states on linguistic basis would draw away the attention from social and economic challenges of the country. But this demand of creating boundaries on linguistic basis took a violent form, especially in Andhra Pradesh. Hence, the Prime Minister announced the formation of separate Andhra Pradesh state in December 1952. State Reorganization Commission was established in 1953, and its main work was to redraw the boundaries of the states of India on the basis of linguistic and cultural diversity. The Commission in its report accepted that the boundaries of the state should reflect the boundaries of different languages. On the basis of its report, State Reorganization Act was passed in 1956. This act led to creation of 14 states and 6 union territories. Hence, the fear of our national leaders proved to be wrong. In spite of creating disintegration, it strengthened the diversity of the Indian state. Besides this, even the linguistic states accepted the principle of diversity. So, when we say that India adopted democracy, it simply does not mean that India has democratic constitution, nor does it mean that India accepted the format of election. For India, democracy means diversity of idea and ways of life. Much of the politics in the later period was to take place within this framework. So, this is what we have to study in this chapter. Thank you.